Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on a weekend. So, I welcome you all to today's hands-on session for Git and GitHub. So, to introduce, my name is Shakti Singh, and I am from Incubate India, and I welcome you all to today's hands-on workshop using GitHub. So, Code Innovation Series is a collaborative initiative under which we are performing this workshop. So this is a joint initiative by GitHub and Incubate that aims to create an open source platform for colleges and students across India to ignite the passion and to build a better world around us and to support open source communities. So GitHub is a subsidiary of Microsoft, which provides hosting for software development and version controlling using Git. It offers the distributed version control, source code management functionality of Git, and also various student developer packs and the teachers training program under the same. So if I wanted to introduce about Incubate India is India's largest and fastest growing community of technology innovators, including startups and student developers. So today's hands-on workshop will be conducted by Mr. Kaushik Roy. He is the principal architect at Incubate India. And before we begin, I would request all of you to get onto your respective laptops and desktops, as this is going to be a hands-on session, and this can truly relished if we experience it firsthand by practicing alongside with the mentor. This workshop will comes handy during the hackathon, which is scheduled today for the respective college, and the themes are centered around health tech, fintech, and edtech. So Kaushik is the mentor for the day for all of us, and he'll be guiding us through the whole hands-on workshop. So I would just request Kaushik to get started, and I'm just handing over the virtual mic and stage to Kaushik. Therefore, thank you, Kaushik. Hi, Kaushik.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming up this early on a Sunday morning. What we'll be doing is that we'll be heading straight over to what actually GitHub is. Because today, in this current scenario, when we talk of GitHub or we are understanding certain terms like whether it is how actually GitHub has changed, how actually version control is working, we have to understand that there are certain parameters, there are certain factors which have led to its rise. And what are those parameters? If we do have to get through it quickly and understandably understand how actually this entire ecosystem, that is the developer ecosystem, is working, we would be going through the entire presence and get to know what actually GitHub is and why has it changed the entire way in which the industry is working today. So I'd request everyone, those who are there on the live session, please, if you feel, if you have any doubt, if you have got any queries, please free to ask yourself onto the chat section, and we will be more than happy to help you. So this is how actually we will be working out. Now, without wasting much of time, I'll just share my screen so that we all get to understand what GitHub is and go through the basics of utilizing a version control system. So I'll just share my screen. What did I- So, good morning, everyone, once again. So, this session is completely hands on, so which means that we would be going through certain prerequisites. The prerequisites would be that you need to have an internet connection and a desktop handy nearby you so that you are able to access it, you are able to work around with it, as well as you need to have a GitHub ID logged in. So, first of all, before we get into the intricacies of GitHub, we need to understand what GitHub is and lay a platform to it. So suppose I'm just a student or doing an internship somewhere in location, or I'm just a intern in some other MNCs. So how do we actually work around with it? How do we actually do different things? So suppose we get to hear terms like, hey, have you generated a pull request? Hey, have you generated a merge request? Hey, are you working around with it? So there are different terms which are associated directly to it. That do you need to have you removed the conflict that was appearing? So these are the different terms that we get to hear. These are the different terminologies. Now when we are speaking of terms, what happens actually is that whether we are on an internship, whether we are working as an employee, whether we are working or attending a web session or a software developer boot camp, what actually happens is that we get to hear these terms a lot. And for a new developer or a new entrant who has not yet known what version control is, he suddenly jumps into the environment wherein he sees that, okay, hey, do not know what these terms are. Where are these referring to? So, for instance, just assume that you do not know anything about version control and someone says, hey, have you forked my repository? And then suddenly out of nowhere, I would be intrigued and left with just guessing answers that, okay, fork, for me forking is just like, okay, it's a type of a spoon through which I eat my noodles. So that would be a new thing for me. That would intrigue me, how a developer is asking me that fork a repository, how do I fork a repository? And then again there's one more term, repository. So I do know what a directory is, I do know what a folder is, but what is a repository? So these are the terms that actually intrigue us as new developers as we grow on. But rather on, when we move forward, when we are accustomed or acquainted with GitHub terminologies, basically version control terminologies, these all become pretty much common to us. So the major question that we will be addressing today is that what is GitHub and why is everyone talking about it? So moving ahead, the agenda for the today would cover what is version control, first of all, because that's the backbone of the entire system that we would be dealing about, because at the end of the day, development and deployment are the two important major concerns that needs to be addressed, and contributive or collaborative development as well as deployment is the key structure of the version control system. Then we'll be understanding what is Git, because at the end of the day, whether it is Git or GitHub, so the backbone of the GitHub is laid on Git. So we need to understand what Git is. We'll be going through the entire GitHub levels. We will be understanding what a repository is. So once we understand what a repository is, we will be creating a repository as well of our own. Then we will be going through by creating our own repository. We will be playing around with certain commands, say for example, add, commit, status, branch, pull, push, merge, log, and clone. We would be exploring GitHub. We would be forking certain repositories. So with fork, we would be understanding actually what fork is. Then we'll be going through what a README file is. We'll be understanding certain GitHub GUIs. And then at the end of the day, we'll be generating a pull request. So the pull request, those who would be generating successfully would be receiving a certificate. So this is how actually the entire session would go around. So I'll just head over with the session. So I'll just quickly switch off my cam so that it does not distract people. So I'll just turn off my cam. I will, um, mm, yeah, that's perfect. So with this, I'll just move ahead. So basically, we all have faced now. One more thing that needs to be paid attention is that we all need to pay attention that each and every point from here on will play an important aspect in our understanding of GitHub. Because somewhere or the other, we have to understand what was the reason that a version control system was required. Because everyone was working fine even without a version control system. It was not that version control was there back in 1970s or 1960s when project development was not done. Actually, project development was done back then as well, but we needed something. What was the reason that led to its development? So these are the factors why we require to understand what a version control system is and why was it required. So first things first, what we would be doing is that we would be considering a scenario wherein we would be assuming a role of a graphic designer. We would be going through the entire process. Let's say a graphic designer or a front end designer, and we would be going through the entire steps and iterations involved in the life cycle of a front end designer. And then we understand what was the problem that was faced by the front end designer or a graphic designer in his regular course of uh, designing or his on his regular course of developing the web pages of the front end. So these are the queries that we would be understanding. So first of all, we need to assume a role, and to assume a role, what we would be doing is that how actually GitHub has changed the entire ecosystem of developers, how actually GitHub has changed the entire workflow wherein you are able to contribute and manage your code. So, without wasting much of time, let's just get started. Um, let's say I'm a front end designer and I have been assigned a task to work on a layout of an entire website for our company. So, what would be the ideal case is that I'll be creating a folder, let's say wireframes, as you can see over here, and then create certain subfolders to it so that I can track my progress. Now, what does happen is we work on different scenarios, we work on different socials. Now, how do we create? So, for example, if you have done any project in your later stages, you must be observing that some days or somewhere you would be going through certain changes. So, you get to know that, okay, I've got certain idea which needs to be placed in my layout. On other days, what you'd be feeling is that, okay, I have got certain other ideas or certain other iterations that needs to be deployed over here. So, what do I do then actually? Actually, I would be creating subfolders, I would be naming them, and I would be leaving them. So, in that scenario, how do we overcome? So, overcoming these things, the best scenario without a version control is that I create different subfolders. Now, assuming I have been working for 30 odd days and I have come up with different iterations, different versions, and taking a specific example that I was assigned to build a body of the web page, which would be having certain animations. So I felt that the animation that I had used was not that better compared to the animation that I had thought of. So what do? I create a version. So let's say I create a subfolder iteration one and then create different versions of it. WF desktop app screen 0, iteration 2, iteration 1, iteration 3, and iteration 4. So now just assume the fact that the project mentor, while he was having a daily check onto the updates, at the end of the submission, that is on day 30th, he says that, okay, the one that you had submitted on the day 1 was the best, or day 15th. Or even if just assuming the fact that he does not say that the one that you had submitted on day 15th, he just says that the one that you had submitted, which had certain animations, was the best one. So, what do you do then actually? The obvious case would be you scavenge for different files and folders over there. You look into how to get those ideations. You look into different folders, search for them, and at the end you will find the folder. So how do we do that? Now this was a hectic task. Now add a layer to this, because it was only me working on that project. Now assuming that multiple people are working on the same project. So the actual reality of projects are that whenever you are working on a project, there's a team of developers working along with you. So by the team of developers, what I mean is that there may be a few fellow developers who would be working along with me. Now, how do I cater that need? Because each one would be working at the same time, simultaneously working on the same model. And now, if people are working on the same model, or basically module of the project, how do we address the issues? Because certain things should be changed by the front end developer, while I have also made certain changes to the design, and then he would be saying, okay, I have already worked on it, how do I make the changes that you are asking for? So these are the obvious queries that needs to be resolved. So at one end we had the problem of multiple contributors, and at the other end we had the problem of many versions or many iterations of it. So Linus Torvald, who actually developed Linux operating system, an operating system which was completely open source, had faced the same issues, and By issues, what I mean is that he used to come up with different versions of the project. He used to come up with different iterations of the project, and at the end of the day, he felt that okay, this one is not that sufficient or not that good. I would deploy it later someday, that is after 5 odd days, after 16 odd days, and then I will be utilizing it. So how do I address it? How do I work to it? Now, one more problem that he faced was that he was getting suggestions from different other developers, because this was an open source project which he had started. Different developers across would send him codes, would send him modules to be integrated. Now, assuming the fact that we have got so many Git and GitHub sources, we have got so many sources for the operating system, how does he manage these codes? So what he did is that he came up with a version control system, and by version control system I mean is Git. So he came up with Git, which allowed him to actually manage the entire code base. And how did he manage it? He was actually managing different code sets at different places. So he was pushing the code directly to the branches. And what do I mean by branch is that, let's say we have a main major trunk of the code which runs throughout the entire code structure, and then we are creating different iterations of it. So this is what actually Git was. And then one major issue, because everyone would be saying that if Linus Torvald had developed Git, what was the need that people needed GitHub? So one major issue with Git was that if you were connected somewhere, not at the same place, but on a different network across countries, you were not able to contribute because it did not allow intranet connectivity. Now, with GitHub, what happened actually is that GitHub bought in a tool. So, GitHub is actually a subsidiary of Microsoft, but when it came up, it wasn't. It came up with a solution known as cloud hosting. So cloud hosting is not a unique solution to GitHub, but it utilized it. So what we were doing with GitHub was that we were hosting our code base onto one remote repository, that is one main directory from where different people can actually pull the code. So at the time when we were actually getting a central record system, so just assume that keeping in mind, there's one central database which is known as a remote repository, wherein the entire project folder is stored, and then different people across can have their own smaller copies or multiple copies of the same project. So with GitHub, we got the feature that multiple contributors across the internet, across borders, across countries, or even in different continents would be able to work together on the same code just because of the fact that they were using a code which was hosted somewhere on the internet and were able to make certain changes. Now, with this, we have got to understand what actually GitHub is and how it revolutionized the entire coding development ecosystem. Because you need to pay attention to the fact that before that, people were actually sending in copies of the code on pen drive or sharing them through Google Drive and different other links. So that process was pretty much hectic. The fact that you were sharing the code base through pen drives or different other objects, or even using Google Drive was not, Google Drive or OneDrive was not that useful, because the fact that you had to download the file folder again and again, you would not be able to create certain copies and replicas and work around with it. So with this, I assume that we have completely done with understanding what GitHub is. Now, the next thing that we'll be doing is that the first and foremost thing that needs to be done while we are using GitHub is that we need to have Git installed onto our systems. So if you are having a Linux or a Mac OS, you probably may be having Git already installed onto your system. But if you are using a Windows system, you need to install it. So the link for it is usually git-scm.com/downloads, or you can simply type git download, and the first link that pops up for the Git website is the one through which you can download it. Now, once you have downloaded Git onto your system, the one thing that you are required to do is set up it. And to set it up, you need to type in certain commands. So, right now, I'll be heading straight over to the terminal. That is, from now on, we'll be doing the hands-on completely so that people are well aware of the fact that how to utilize GitHub, because at the core of this session we have the concept of understanding how to utilize GitHub and how to bring it into our day-to-day life. So heading over there straight. Okay, where is it? Yeah, I've got it here. Let's just head over to my, yeah, we are there. So what we'll be doing is that, first of all, first and foremost thing, assuming a scenario, because without a scenario, without a preconceived environment, that what is the scenario where I'm working on, it would not be justifiable that, okay, I'm working on certain scenario. So let's assume I'm a backend developer in a company and as well as playing the role of a project maintainer. So I've got two jobs. One is that I will maintain the project code. The other being I'm a backend developer. Now I've got a fellow developer who's a front end developer who would be working along with me, and a database engineer who would be helping me in connectivity with different structures, different modules. So first of all, what we'll be doing is that we'll be creating a project folder as is the usual case. So in the usual case, what we usually do is that we create multiple project folders, we work in it, we store all the data into it, and then share the entire folder via pen drive or any sort of other cloud hosting solutions to the fellow developers without using version control. But over here, what we'll be doing is that we'll be creating a new repository. So with this, we get a new term which is known as repository. So by repository, what we mean is that it's a type of a folder. So if you working with a project folder, you usually do create a folder for it. Similarly, over here as well, we do create multiple versions of it. And by versions, what I mean is that we are creating different project folders for the same project. Now it will contain different subfolders in it, which we will be maintaining through branches and version control organized systems. So the next thing would be that we need to understand how do we create a repository, because repository is the name given to for project folders or directory over here. So to create a repository, the first step is that you will find, once you log on to github.com, you would land onto a screen like this, wherein on the left hand pane you will find a button known as new. So once you click on new, you would be redirected to a repository creation page, wherein you can just give a name to the repository. And while I'm speaking that you can give a name to the repository, it's just same as giving a name to the project folder. So let's just say I will type in a name, hello GitHub. Okay. With this, as soon as I have provided a name to the project folder, the next step that comes up to for me to select is that which type of repository will it be, whether it would be a public repository or whether it would be a private repository. And over here, by public and private repository, what we mean is that there are actually two types of repositories. At the core of GitHub, it is the largest open source organization currently in the world.
Excuse me, Kaushik.
Yeah,
We've got two questions for you. I'm just from, it's
yeah.
like somebody is asking, do we need to download any specific extension in VS Code?
So yeah, you can always work around with extensions on VS Code, which would actually help you in longer run. But if you are just gonna start, you can always do it without extensions as well. I just recommend a few extensions. Some of them being GitLens, which allows you to maintain the um, actually see the commit histories and all. So I'll be demonstrating them actually once I get back into the VS Code editor, as soon as I have done with the creation of repository, because at the end we will have to move to the local repositories, and all those things would be done over there on the VS Code itself. Um, could we have the
Okay,
second
Kaushik.
question?
Yeah, so that addresses the second question as well. Somebody has asked, could you please explain the entire setup process for the same
Yeah,
for Visual
sure.
Studio Code?
Yeah, sure.
Also, yeah, also there's a small request that is put across. Uh, can you just slow down the pace a little bit?
Okay, sure. I'll just keep that
Sure,
in mind.
sure,
Okay.
Kaushik. Thank you. Please continue.
Thank you, Sakti. So yeah, getting back. First thing first, we need to create a repository. Now, as soon as we have given the name to the repository, so I'll just keep that in mind that I do not hustle up or do not go in pace. So I'll just go a bit slow. So once we have created a repository, what we get is that we get to select the type of repository that we'll be using. So there are two types of repository actually over here, one being the public, the other being the private. Now, what we mean by public repository is that if you are creating a public repository on GitHub, then anyone on the internet who has got the link to your repository or who can actually do a good Google search. So if he is able to find your repository on the internet, he'll be able to view the code that is present onto your code, as well as suggest certain changes if you like those changes. You can actually merge those changes, or he can make a copy of your code and work on himself. So these are the two things that come into play when we are talking about public repositories. Now the fact that why do I make a repository public is a big question. So today on GitHub, the code base of major organizations, those which are using, are actually public. So by public, what we mean is that they have open sourced their code base. So for example, Mozilla has its most of the code base open sourced, and people do suggest certain changes, that which is the reason why people are opting for Mozilla, and developers are going over there, and Mozilla sees a lot of features day in and day out. The other type of repository is a private repository. And by private repository, what we mean is that you would be able to create a repository which would not be seen by anyone on the internet. They would not be able to view it even if they have the link to that repository. Now, the question may arise, why do I need a private repository? Excuse me. So, we do need private repository just in case that we are working on a licensed project, or whether we are working on a startup project which we do not want to share, or we are working on a private project or a personal project. So what you can do is that once you have selected a private repository, only those people whom you provide the access to the repository would be able to make certain changes onto the code, would be able to make certain other changes or suggest those changes. Other than that, no one on the internet would be able to contribute to your code. So right now, since we are doing hello GitHub, I'll just be opting for a public repository. The next step would be I click on a README file. So a README file is just a set of instructions. So by README file, what I mean is that, uh, have you ever seen that if you buy a refrigerator, if you buy a TV, or if you buy any sort of product and bring it home, you get a user manual with it. And a user manual contains a set of instructions on how to set up that product. So if you have got a TV, it will have a set of user manual which would say that you need to establish it somewhere on the wall, press the plug into the plug switchboard, and then switch it on. So this would be the user manual for setting up a TV. Similarly for washing machine, similarly for refrigerator, or any sort of product that comes into your mind comes up with a user manual. Similarly, software projects come up with a user manual for the developers to be able to set up the entire environment of development. And now when I'm speaking of the entire environment of development, Yeah, you are hearing me correctly. For a project to run, you need to set up an environment onto your system because it may be a PHP based project which may require certain servers like Apache or whatnot. You may be requiring, if you are doing a Java server, you may be a Java project, you may require a servlet. So these are the parameters or these are the things that you would be requiring at one end, and at the other end what you would be requiring is that you would also need to have a ignore file, so that once you have set up the project you will be able to monitor those files. You would be able that those files that you have set up for your environment onto the local system do not affect the actual repository. So what I mean by actual repository is that while setting up a server, you actually put up a lot of environment variables. You put up a lot of folders and files which do nothing but just cater to the need of operating a server, operating a code base. Now, how do we handle it? So, we won't ask our systems to actually have a repository which has all the environment variables, because for every system, that whether it is a Linux based system or a Windows system, we have different necessities. Now, in that case, there will be different requirements for each of the systems. So, we do not want any other sort of folders which are environment variables or environment type setups to affect or make the size of the repository bulky. So these are the two things. Right now, since we'll be just dealing with a basic HTML code, we won't be getting into those parameters. Now the next thing that we'll be going through is that once we have done with this, we will simply create a repository. Now once you have clicked on repository, you would land onto a screen like this, which will have your username slash the name of the repository. Now, this is the actual action center from where you would be managing the entire project. Now, if you look over here, what you see is that you would be seeing that the project has been initialized with a readme file because I had added it over here. Then you would see different other options on the top, which would be addressing or viewing soon after once we have started with a basic project. Now, the first and foremost thing that comes up into the mind of a developer is that how do I move ahead with the project? Because I'll have to add in the project files, I'll have to run the code, I have to test the code, and to run and test the code, I will need a IDE or a integrated development environment. So what do I do then? Because I do not see any option to put in the code or run the code, because for me as a backend developer I do use VS Studio Code. Now I do not see how to will I run the code and test the code. So for me there's a lot of pain that how do I actually use the code. So there's a pretty simple solution to it. You can actually make a clone of the repository. So here comes a major aspect, a major point of GitHub, which says that you can have two repositories. One being the remote repository, which allows you to maintain the code overall. That is, you would be maintaining it throughout on the internet, and all the people who are having the access to it will work around with it. At the other end, you have got a local repository. So why do we get a local repository and why do we even need it? So local repositories are those repositories in which you can actually work out different problems, in which you can test your code, in which you can run your code, and at the end you would be able to manage it. Now, moving on next, what we'll be doing is that since we have understood that we would be making a local repository and a copy of the entire project over here, we would simply get to code. So to create a copy of the code, we would be clicking on code, copying this link. So remember, what we are actually doing is that we are setting up a pipeline between a local system and a remote system. So remote system would be connected to each and every developer. So say I'm a front-end developer, I'll also be having the access to the remote repository. Similarly, a back-end developer, that is me, would be having the access to remote repository. We would be updating the code onto the remote repository regularly at regular intervals so that it does not affect our code base, and we would be utilizing it, as well as we would be having our own copy of local repositories onto our own respective systems from where we would be utilizing and working along with Git. So first thing what we would be doing is that,
Excuse me, Kaushik.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt back again. We've got two more questions for you.
okay,
So, Ayush has asked, sir, can you talk about license and what licenses should a student use in his projects? And
okay, yeah, got it.
yeah, and a similar question like that has come across. So maybe you can address both of them together. So,
Okay,
what is the use of license option in the repository?
okay, yeah, yeah. So as I was stating, I'll just move a step back. Once you are talking of GitHub, what are the two factors that come into play is that when you are utilizing the features of open source, there's a very thin line between duplicacy to between piracy. So just imagine, since you have uploaded a proprietary project onto internet, and since you are pretty good, what you have done is that I'll just to explain it better, what I'll do is that I'll just open a new tab and I'll show you what are the licenses present over here in GitHub. So what actually will happen is that you have created multiple projects which are very important and have a high value of it. You can actually create anything which is open source. So just imagine someone has created Linux, which is an open source operating system, and then some people who are forging or are not good people, just to say in a layman's language, have actually copied the entire code base and have added a price tag to it. So how do you hinder it? Because at the end, you are providing the same software in free to everyone to use, but at the other end, people are charging for it. So how do you cater to that demarcation? How? Because that's a very thin line. Because you would say that the open source person did not restrict me from using it for any purpose. So you need to present a thin line, a border that allows that, okay, if it is for open source, you need to use it only for open source, and the sole right of the actual project code remains with the person who is using it. So if I get down over here, what you will see is that the type of licenses, the first and foremost license is Apache license, which is pretty much famous. The other license which people use is MIT license. So MIT is also very much used over here, which you can utilize over the period. So if you'll just click on learn more and go through this document which has been uploaded by GitHub, you will find all your queries answered over here. You can simply just go to create repository, you will find the link that learn more, and you will be redirected to this page wherein you will get how to choose a right license for your project, determining the location. So it also plays an important aspect, that where do you place the license file, because you may feel that, okay, the entire project does not need a license, only a certain module of it requires a license, so you can add that license over there. So over here you can see the list of licenses present on GitHub and how to utilize it for different objects. So this is what actually licensing allows you, that you cannot force the code that has been faithfully or actually with the efforts of helping the community has been deployed by someone. So I hope this answers your the query. Both the queries, I assume. So moving back next to the place where we were, we need to now have a copy of this code onto our local systems to operate over there. So what I'll do is that I will simply click on code. Just check that the clone appears over here and check that HTTPS has been marked, and we will click on this icon. So now for the first timers who have just downloaded Git onto their systems, you need to type in certain commands to activate Git over there. So how do we activate Git is a major concern because for many they are not aware of how to activate Git. So what we'll do is that I'll head over to the terminal, not terminal actually, Windows Explorer. I'll just open the folder where I want to place my code. So let's say I'll place my repository over here. Now, if you have installed VS Studio Code, all you can do is simply right click and click on Open with Code. Otherwise, you can open Git Bash if you have installed Git successfully. Or the other way around is that you can open any sort of terminal. So to open a terminal in Windows, what you need to do is you need to press Windows plus R button. The run option would pop up. All you need to do is type in CMD, press enter, and command prompt would open. And once you have opened the command prompt, all you need to do is get to the directory where you are actually gonna use the code. So you can simply type in the set of commands, say cd, and that is to change the directory and the name of the directory and move over there. So these are the things through which you can initialize a Git repository. Now for the first timers, what you need to do is that I will show you what are the commands. Cause for me to set up the Git again, I'll have to uninstall the entire setup and then install it, and which would take around couple of hours, which would not be a healthy way of doing it. So I'll just show how to do it actually. So I'll be creating a setup, and to create the Git configuration over here, what I need to do is that I'll have to type in a set of commands. So once I've installed Git, I'll have to type these commands, which is git space config hyphen hyphen global user.name and provide my name in double quotes. Then git config hyphen global space user.email and the email. So these are the things through which you can set up Git onto your systems. Now, once you have set up the Git, one more thing that many people do feel a query about is that how do I actually get to the resources which I require? So, for instance, I may be having certain queries which needs to be addressed, and I do not know where to go. So, what GitHub has done is that GitHub has provided a very beautiful microsite which allows you to actually manage and understand the basics of GitHub and utilizing it. The link to which is lab.github.com, wherein you will find, if you will just scroll down, you will find the entire set of tutorials, I would say, or courses through which you can get to understand how to utilize GitHub, how to utilize GitHub Actions using Markdown, which is README file, and different other parts like first day on GitHub, first, so on and so forth. So these are the things that you can actually utilize. And there are many other features which you can explore. So for example, if you see over here GitHub pages, so by GitHub pages what you get to have is that you get to have your own personal portfolio or resume present on the internet. So with this you get this option as well. Now moving back, we'll just head back to where we were. So we were setting up a local repository, and to set up a local repository, all you need to do is just right click on open with code. Once the VS Studio Code has opened, I assume that the screen is visible and the commands. Okay, I'll have to zoom in a bit. It seems. I hope this is the perfect size. So what we'll be doing next is that we would be moving ahead with the code base. So I'll have to initialize the repository over here. And the command to clone the repository is git clone. So git is the first command which says or makes the computer understand that okay, you are gonna use a git command. The second one being clone, which allows you to create a clone. So clone states that you would be making a copy of the repository, and then just copy it, just paste the link of the repository from the link which you had copied from here. So I'll just show you to you again. Where did I go? Here. Okay, so this is the link that you need to copy. The link which is present in the clone drop down. Once you click on it, just head over to your terminal, type in git clone and paste that link. That is it. And then press enter. And as soon as you press enter, what you will see is that in the left hand pane, which had the Explorer, a Hello GitHub folder has automatically been created. Now I'll just simply close it just to confirm that it is actually present over there. You can see Hello GitHub has been created, and once I click on it, you will see there are two folders. One is a hidden folder which is known as .git, and the other is a readme file. So with .git, you get a confirmation that this folder is a Git repository on the local system. So you'll be able to use the version control over here. And then we have got the readme file. And the contents of the readme file would be same as the content over here. And here onto the remote repository, if you will see, there's only one statement written, which is hello GitHub. Similarly, if I'll open this folder in Visual Studio Code, you will find there's a readme file which has the similar content which contains hello GitHub. Now, few people were saying how to set up Visual Studio Code with extensions. I'll get to it. So I'll just quickly show what are the extensions installed onto my system. So if you will click over here, and you do see I have 24 installed extensions. I'll just quickly open it. So the few ones which impact Git are Git history, which allows you to actually view the history or Git log. You can use GitHub pull requests, which allows you to simply just check and generate a pull request easily. Git lens, which actually manages this entire setup. It gives you the feed. So over here, if you see, if you get over to any of the statements, you will see what are the details, each and every detail, the commit number, the commit name, who has committed, and what was the time. So GitLens allows you to do it. So these are the few extensions that you can use, as well as if you are a web developer, you can also go through different other extensions that are present over here. So these are the few good extensions that you can always use, and I would recommend. So moving back to our Explorer, what you see is that I have created a folder and a README file. Now the first step would be, as a developer, I would require to create file, a file which would contain and actually work throughout and contain the contents for our basic project layout. So what I'll do is that I'll just click on new file over here, give it a name. And remember, since this is not a completely web development bootcamp, what I'd be doing is that I'd simply be skipping certain syntaxes of how to use or how to type in the code, because it is for the basic understanding of how version control actually affects us. So what I'd be doing is that I'd be typing in HTML. Yeah, there we go. We will just type it over here, a name. Let's say we give it a title, hello GitHub. So I'll be reiterating it once again. This is not the correct way of writing a code on HTML code. That is, I would be skipping certain methodologies which won't affect, but this is for the sole understanding of how to utilize version control. So next, what we'll be doing is that I'd be simply adding a tag. Let's say h1 tag, and let's say I'd be typing in something. Welcome to GitHub code workshop. Okay, and just save it. Now what I'll do is that I, as a backend developer, has
Excuse me, Kaushik.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you back again. Uh, we've got some questions for you.
yes, sure.
So Somebody's asking, can you just do this on maybe using some other ID? Can we do the same things using some other ID? Some
Yeah, we
other
can do.
which code base.
Yeah, yeah, got it, got it. Are there any other questions, or this is the only one?
Uh, and there's a request back again to slow up a bit. And can you just
Okay.
zoom in a little bit more the screen
Yeah,
so that we
I'll
can see
just
the code?
try. Okay. Okay, I've zoomed in. This would get impacted. The other thing was that what IDs can we use? So I'll just answer it quickly. So you can use any sort of ID that you have got, but the one that we recommend usually is Visual Studio Code because it has got a great community support, and lot of developers actually work for the progression of Visual Studio Code. Otherwise, you can use any IDs or text editors like Atom. If you have got Linux, you can use Vim. Mac OS also people can use Vim. So there are different other IDs which you can use, but the one which is recommended and is available across platforms is Visual Studio Code, because with VS Code you get a set of extensions, you get a set of other features that none other IDs actually provide now. So obviously you can use any sort of IDs, but the one which is preferred is VS Studio Code. So was that it?
Also, there's one
Yeah.
question from Shubham. Can we use the license in existing repo? If yes, then how?
So, what is usually preferred is that you apply a license at the very beginning of the project. Otherwise, you can always just simply delete that repository or move over that repository and then start over from that license folder. Or what I'd say is that you can manually place that license. So license is simply a text file which has certain enumerations present over there, so you can create a license of your own. So yeah, one more thing that comes in handy is that it is these were the set of licenses provided by GitHub. Now you can always create your own license for you. So it does not affect that you have to use a given set of license. You can have your own license which has certain restrictions set by you, your own custom license. So that, I hope that answers the query, that you can always place your own license into the repository.
Uh, Also, there are a few requests if we can spare some time, maybe after the demonstration on Visual Studio Code. So some people are requesting if we can do the same using Git Bash.
Okay, sure, sure. I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh, all right. That's it. Thank you. Please continue.
yeah. Thanks. So once we have laid the basic structure, we were at creating the basic structure. Now, just to confirm, if we head over to the remote repository over here, you will find that none of the changes which had happened over there have yet been affected. So these are the things that you need to keep in mind, that the changes that you're making on local repository have not yet been added even to the local repo. So if you get over to index.html, you will find that this repository is untracked, which means that it has not been added in the index of the local Git. Now, since I've set up the code base, what I'll do is that I will open terminal. So VS Studio Code comes up with its own terminal. I'll simply press Ctrl plus tilde and the terminal would pop up. What I'll do is that I'll lower it. Yeah, there we go. So now I have this file which I've created. Now I need to add these files. I need to create different and store it and get the index added, so that then I can push this code actually to the remote repository, and only then different developers, that is my front end developer and the database engineer, would be able to work on it. So what I'll do is that I will simply type on git add. And remember, these are the set of commands which are pretty important to be learned across. So what I'll do is that I will type in git add and a period, and with git add And as soon as I press enter, if you will follow that this U would change into A, which would state that index has been added. So as soon as I press enter, this U has changed into A, which states that the index for this file, the file which was index.html, has been added into the Git local repository. Now the next thing is that since I have laid the basic setup, I'll have to get a message delivered to my front-end developer that, hey, front-end developer, I have started the project. All you need to do now is that you will be required to add designs to it. Now, how do I convey it to him? Because he is somewhere in Bangalore, I am in Delhi, and he does not know that whether or not I have even committed the code. So there's a command for it as well, which allows you to send in a message along with committing that, okay, I have done something. So by commit, what I mean is that actually I am confirming that I have made these changes and this has been done by me. So the next obvious step is that we will be creating a commit. So I'll just type in git space commit. This is the command for it. Then hyphen m. So the command is git commit, and to add in a message after commit is that hyphen m space double quotes and then type your message. So what I'll type is that I have initiated project. Please move ahead with the design. And after this, as soon as I press enter, what you will see is that you will find a commit has been created with the commit number being this and the message which states I have initiated the project. Please move ahead with the design. Now the next thing that we will do is that we will have to push this code to the remote repository. So remember, even though a pipeline has been set up between a local repository and a remote repository, the interactions of the code will only happen through two commands, which are pull and push. So if you are pulling something from the remote repository, it would come directly onto the local repository. And if you are pushing the code, it would be vice versa. That is, the changes that you have made onto the local repository would be impacted over there onto the remote repository. Now, once you have committed the code, you can simply type in git space push, and then if you press enter, by default, the code would be pushed onto the remote repository, which is connected to this local repository and to the branch, which is present over here. So this would be the by default command. But if you want to specify something, what you need to do is the syntax for push command is git push and the repository to which you are gonna push. So in git, origin is the alias given to the remote repository by default. So once a remote repository is connected to a local repository, the name given to it is origin. So we can type in origin instead of the entire URL of that repository. Then the next command would be git push origin and the name of the branch. So the branch in which we are working currently is main branch. So there's a default name given to the branch in which we are working. So earlier it used to be master branch, which was the by default branch in which you work, but currently it is the main branch. To confirm on which branch you are, the command is get branch, and as soon as I press enter, you will see the list of branches, and right now there is only one branch, which is main. Now the next command is git, which we are doing was that we are pushing the code. So I'll type in git push origin and then main, and as soon as I press enter, you will see that certain operations take place and the code would be pushed directly to the remote repository. So just to confirm, I'll just head over to the remote repository. reload the page, and still none of the changes have appeared over here. So what I'll do, I will head over there and with the push command, that is git push origin main, I'll press enter, and there you go. Certain operations have taken place. If you will find the commit message number which was just 6243382 will actually be pushed to the remote repository. And if we head over to the remote repository and reload the page, you will find the same commit number which is 6243382 is present over here, and index.html file has been added over here. So this is how actually you can work around with it. Now the next thing, if you look carefully, is that how is the file contents present over there, you need to confirm have actually been copied over here or not. So to do that, all you need to do is click on index.html and you will find the exact same code that was present over there has been committed over here directly. Now, the next step is that what do we do with this? So, suppose if we are working on different other projects, if we are working on different other substances, how do different people collaborate? So, the next important thing that we'll be learning is that how do we pull the code from remote repository? And to pull the code, what we need to do is that we will have to make an exact replica of it and copy the entire contents over here onto the remote repository, local repository as well. So to do that, what we'll be doing is that we will be heading back to the local repository. So before we head back to local repository, there needs to be certain changes that we make over here. And to make those changes, what we'll type is that let's just edit directly over here onto the remote repository. So what I'll do is that I will simply type, let's say, remember this is not a web development course, so we would be just violating certain syntax for the sake of understanding. So what I'll do is that I will add another, let's say, paragraph stating we are just using the command, so just typing it, not doing the actual code. So if I as a web developer have to add certain designs to a web page, I'll have to either add a inline css to add color to it, or I'll have to add a css file which would be connected to the index file or the html file, which will have all the different characteristics for design elements. So right now, since the time is constrained, what I'll be doing is that I'll simply be typing it over here. So I'll just type, um, let's just say I'll simply type color equals to red. So this is what actually is present over here. For the sake of understanding, though this would just appear as a text if we run it, but right now let's just assume that we have provided color red to the HTML page. Now let's head over to the commit message and type in, as a front-end developer, I would send the message, I have added color to the website, and then commit the changes. Now once we have committed the changes, what we need to do is that this changes have been made by a remote person, that is a front-end developer. How does the back-end developer, that is me, working on my local repository, get the code? Because if I'll just scroll, you will see there are none of the changes mentioned over here. So what I'll do is that I will simply type in git pull, and as the push command works, similarly in pull you have got an entire syntax which is git pull origin and then the name of the branch. So I'll be pulling from main. And as soon as I press enter, what you will observe is that the line number 12 would automatically appear over here. So as soon as I press enter, you will find that color equals to red has come up over here on line number 12. So this is how actually multiple people can work on the same project, upload their files, upload their code base onto the internet. Now the next thing that we'll be doing is that we'll be heading over and then creating a branch of the repository. So what we have understood is that we have understood certain commands. We will head over to the PPT and just check that what all we have covered. So we have added a file, we have committed the files, we have actually now we'll learn is that we will create branches. So why are branches that important? So we'll be learning that. We will learn the merge command, and at the end we will be checking what a log command is, and with this we would be done with our basic understanding of how to utilize GitHub. So we will get back over here. The next thing that we need to do is that we need to create a branch. And so to create a branch, what we need to do is that what is a scenario that we need different versions. So branch directly leads to creating different versions. Now assume that I'm a backend developer as well as a project maintainer, but the project mentor who is actually guiding us says that, okay, hey Kosik and team, you have added a very beautiful website, you have created it. It has got red color, but I do feel that a black colored website would look good. So why don't you create a copy of it rather than directly implementing it? Because at the end of the day, even the mentor has certain suggestions and he also does have certain queries, okay, that it may look good or it may not look good. So how does he actually address to that is concerned that, okay, if we create a black version, it may look good rather than a red version. So what I'll do actually is that as a project maintainer, in usual case, what I would have done is that I would have created exact copy of the project folder, that is copy and paste, and then work again into it by changing the code. But now since I'm using version control, what I'll be doing is that I'll be creating a new branch. Let's say since the branch should be having a black color, we would simply create black colored branch and the name I would give is black. So what we'll do is that we will do it right now by set of commands. So the command for it is get branch. And now since we are also gonna switch to the branch, what we'll do is that we'll type in the command which is get checkout. So what checkout does is that actually switches to a new to some other branch. So right now we are in main. We need to check out, that is we need to switch to a branch, and let's say we will create a new branch, the command for which is -b, and let's give the branch a name, let's say black. So as soon as I press enter, you'll get a message switch to a new branch black, and to confirm that whether or not there are multiple branches, you can type in get branch and you will find there are two branches, black and main. So once done with this, I'm on the black branch right now. I will simply change this code to black. This is just for the sake of understanding. I will save it, get over to the terminal, add this file. So I'll type in git add period, git commit, black version is ready, press enter, git push. Now, if I'll push this code, I'll get an error message. The message would be that there is no upstream branch named as black. So if I'll get to the remote repository, you will find that there is only one branch in the report repository, which is main. And since I'm working on a new branch created, which is Git branch named as black, it does not find any branch over here with the name of black, so it will not be able to push the code. So as soon as I press enter over here, you will get an error message which would say, let me just roll it up so that everyone. So as soon as I pressed enter get push, there was an error message which says the current black branch has no upstream branch. To push the current branch and set the remote as upstream, use this. So I'll have to set an upstream branch by the name of black over there. So all I need to do is simply copy it, or you can even type it up. The command being git push hyphen hyphen set hyphen upstream space origin and black. And with this, as soon as I press enter, the file branch would be pushed to the remote repository. And if I head over there and reload the page, you will see that now there are two branches, one the main and the other being a black branch. So this is how actually you have created a branch onto the remote repository. And to see the changes and to visualize it, what you can do is that once I have clicked on index.html, I do see it has a color red, and if I click on black branch, it has got the color black. So this is how actually you can work with different versions at the same time and work along with it. Now the next thing that we'll be doing today is that we'll be merging the branch. So I'll just head over back to my terminal, and currently let me just check. I'm on black branch. I will check out to main. Pause. Oops, I just did not type in the name of the branch. Main, and as soon as I press enter, I will find that there's a color red onto the main branch. Now assuming that the mentor says that okay, the black version is looking the best and you need to make the changes everywhere, what I'll do is that I'll simply merge the branch onto the main branch. And to merge the branch, all you need to do is get to the recipient branch. So I'll be merging it into the main. So I've switched to main. If you can see over here, git checkout main, I'll be typing in git merge, which states that I'm merging something, and the name of the branch. So the branch name is black, and as soon as I press enter, what you'll see that the line number 12, where color equals to red is written, would change into color equals to black. And there we go. We have not switched the branch, because if you want to check which branch I'm currently on main branch. It will be confirmed by this statement that the main branch now has got the color black. So this is it. With this, you would be able to manage the basics of a, where was I? Yeah. With this, you would be able to manage the basics of GitHub. You would be able to manage a project. You would be able to collaborate with others. So I hope this was pretty much helpful as a session. Now, the next thing that we'll be doing is an important task, a task which would require each one of us to complete a task, that is generate a pull request, and all those who will be successfully generating a pull request would be receiving a certificate from GitHub. So what I'll do is that I will head over to the organization, which is, okay, let me check. Here we go. Yeah, we are here in getting started with GitHub in KIIT, that is Karenga Institute of Technology. So I'll just drop this link into the chat so that everyone on the internet who is watching this can actually have the access to it. So the task is that all those who would be generating us pull request successfully would be receiving a certificate from GitHub and Incubate IND, and that specifies the amount of importance of this workshop. So I'll simply head over to here and I will drop the link. I've dropped the link of the repository into the chat section. You all can head over there directly. Now, let's just say, yeah, here we are. So the first thing that needs to be done is that you will be required to fork the repository. And remember why generating a pull request is important, because today in current era, anyone gets deployed or gets an offer letter or gets placed in companies like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, or the companies that you dream of by simply committing or actually contributing to open source folders. So this is how important it is. So what you need to do is that you will have to get over to the fork button. So the first thing is that you click on fork button. So I request everyone who is following me to click on the fork button, and you'll be able to make a copy of the repository onto your own. Remember, generating a pull request allows you to have a copy. Actually, my bad. Generating a fork allows you to have a copy of your own or of that repository. And once you have made certain changes, and if you generate a pull request, you actually are suggesting certain changes to the maintainer of that project, and he or she would be able to actually merge it. So the first step is that click on fork button. Then, if you have got a single ID, it will directly prompt you to a forked repository. Otherwise, you need to select your username. So I'll select my username to confirm that the repository has been forked successfully or not. You can see that your username would come over here and the statement forked from the original repository would appear over here. So this states that you have actually forked a repository from somewhere. Now, the next thing would be that you need to add certain changes. So, for the sake of understanding, what we would be doing is that we would be adding a file. So, just click on the add file and then create new file. Now, what you need to do is you need to type in your name. So, my name is Kaushik. I'll just type it in over here. Then a backslash, which allows you to create a folder, and then type in readme.md. Once you are done with this, what you need to type is that my name is, just type in for the sake that you are actually making certain changes, because this is for the sole purpose of academics and understanding that how do you create a pull request. So my name is Kaushik and I am good in Java. So with this, scroll down, go to the commit message section, and then just add in your name so that we are able to get to know who has actually generated the pull request, and only those would be getting the certificates. And then press commit new file. Once you have committed the file, you would land onto a screen like this, which will have this branch is one commit ahead of KITDU Bhubaneswar. You will find a pull request button. So click on it. Just confirm that it says able to merge. Click on create pull request. Then again check that the message says Kaushik is adding. That is your name over there. And for the one final time, click on create pull request. And as soon as you create pull request, you would be allotted a number and your commit message would appear over here, which suggests that you have successfully created the pull request. So this is all what you're required to do. Other than that, nothing else is required. I do see that few of them have already done it. So with this, you would be successfully generating a pull request. And by pull request, the importance of pull request is so high that today, companies like Fang and Microsoft and other companies that we dream of going to or getting placed at, whether it is Mozilla, whether it is some other company, they are actually directly recruiting developers who are continuously generating pull requests, and their pull requests are being merged into those organizations. So this is how important generating a pull request is, and this is how important you can work on these and contribute to the open source. So all those who would be successfully generating a pull request by the end of the day, that is 6 p.m. in the evening, would be receiving a certificate from GitHub India. So that is it. I hope you all have had a good understanding of what actually GitHub is, and you have got to understand how to work around it. I'll just head over to the PPT and just check that whether we have completed everything or not. So we have successfully generated a pull request. With this, this was Kaushik Roy from Incubate IND. You can connect with me on the LinkedIn at any time if you feel necessary to for any queries related to computer science, web development, app development, or any sort of query that you have got related to tech, or it is GitHub related issues or Git related issues. You can always ping me. I'll be more than happy to help. So thank you everyone. I hope it was a good understanding of what actually GitHub is. So with this, I'll wrap up the session. And once a gentle reminder, all those who would be completing the pull request and generating the pull request would be receiving a certificate. So thanks a lot, everyone. Thank you. I'll be just there for a couple of more minutes so that if you have got any queries, I'll be more than happy to help. Uh, I'll just drop in my LinkedIn into the chat section so that if you want to connect with me, you can always ping me over there and I'll be more than happy.
Thank you so much, Kaushik, for your great session. So if you guys have any queries, you can just let us know. Kaushik, could you just address the some questions in the chat?
Yeah, sure. I'll just look into the question. So, yeah, what is the submission deadline? So you can always submit it till 6 p.m. before. For those who are facing the issue with creating a fork, you can just get a little back into the session and then you will be having the entire step of creating a fork. Whereas I can also tell you in words that you can just click on the fork button to any repository on the top right hand corner. Then a fork would be created. To confirm a fork has been created, just check that your username is present just before the name of the repository, and a statement below it says that this has been successfully forked. And then all you need to do is that add in the file name, add in all the structures that you want to add, and then you can work along with it. Yeah, there's a question that does the same syntax work in Git? Yeah, the entire set of commands that I've shown today will work in any sort of terminal. So if you have Git installed, all these commands will work anywhere, whether you are using VS Studio Code terminal, whether you are using Atom terminal, whether you are using the inbuilt terminal of Mac or any other. So there are a few questions. I'll just try to answer all those. Let me just give me some time. It is only to write access to this report. Okay. Yeah, you cannot merge the pull request. Only the maintainers of the project would be of the repository would be able to merge the pull request. So you only need to generate a pull request. Okay, I did not show the use of git config. Yeah, I did not show because git is already configured into my system, and to actually show the utility of git config, I would have to uninstall the entire setup of my system, and it would take around 1 or more than hour to just establish the git configuration. So that is the reason I did not show. If you are facing trouble with configuring the git, it is a pretty simple command. All you need to do is that if you have not yet install git onto your systems, simply just type in just download git from git-scm downloads, and then type in git config hyphen hyphen user dot name, and then the name that you have got in double quotes and email. So you will be able to configure it. How to check if GitHub is an virus or not? Sorry, I did not get that question. So there are three different repos in Git. Which one is valid? So all the repo. I did not get this answer. Could you please be more informative? Does the same syntax work in Git Bash? Yes, the same syntax will work throughout. So there are three different repos in Git. Which one is valid? So the one which is getting started with KIIT is the valid one. If we use any GitHub in Kali, yeah, you can use GitHub in any sort of editor. I cloned the remote repo. Yeah, so GitHub has recently changed the default branch from master to main. It was done in, I assume, in November last year. So if you are having a Git version that is older than November, that is the reason why you have got master in your local repository. So that answers your query. I'll just highlight it for everyone because this is a very important query that has been raised. I cloned the remote repo to the default branch was main, but in local it is showing master after the branch checkout command. Why so? So GitHub has changed the naming convention for the actual default branch name. It used to be master earlier, but back in November, I assume, or October or December somewhere, the naming convention for the default branch was changed from master to main. So since you may be having a older version of Git into your system, is the reason why it has got master. Are there any questions again? How to set up Git Bash? You do not require any specific set of commands to install the Git Bash. All you need to do is that simply download Git and follow the set of instructions provided over there with the installer. How to know any GitHub has any virus? No, GitHub does not has any virus or malicious things. Okay. Yeah, sure. I'll. There's one last question that I would like to answer. Can you please explain the three-stage architecture of Git and GitHub? Yeah. So at one end, you have got a remote repository which has got the master control. So from there, all the developers or all the fellow contributors who would be working on it have the access to it. At the other end, you have got different versions. So each developer who would be having the access to the repository would be working on it. So each developer will have his own local repository. So basically what we are doing is that there is one master source. So just assume there is yeah, just taking a real world scenario. In a society you do have a water supply tank, so a tank which feeds to the entire society, overhead tank which is present. So the tank is present which heats to everyone in the society. So that is the remote repository. And then you have different other sort repository, that is the local repository. So each house has its own tank, overhead tank, which is a local repository. So what happens is that you actually pull the entire water source. So similarly, you pull the code from the remote repository to your
smaller local repositories. But the only difference over here is that you can also push the code from local repository to the remote repository. I hope this answers the question. There are a few more questions, I feel. The certificates should be sent to you on your email IDs. No worries on that. Uh, you told that you'd be explaining git log. Okay, yeah. It seems that I missed out with git log. So if I'd be allowed, I would simply just show how git log actually works. So let me just share my screen once again. Apologies for that. I thought that I had shown it. So I'll just share my screen once again. Yeah, here we go. I hope the screen is visible right now. Yeah, it is visible. So to check the git log, what actually git log does is that suppose you have been assigned that you need to do certain tasks, and just say the first example wherein the mentor had asked me that you need to get back to that version and I need that. So what would you do then? You will have to scavenge through the files. But with Git, what you have got is that you get the entire log of what all changes you have made with a single command, which is git log. And as soon as you press enter, you will get the list of all the commits that you have made. So I'll just lower the font size so that it is visible for everyone, all the log. So with log command, what you get is that you get the entire list of the changes that have been made into the repository, and at any time you can get back to that older version. So if you will observe carefully, once I pressed git log, what you get is that you get the commit number along with the commit message. So here, if suppose I just want to get back to the version wherein I had just added the color, that is there was only one version and no other branch, that is there was only red colored version. So what I can do is that I can simply copy this commit number from here with the help of git log. So once I click git log, I get the commit numbers, and I'll copy this commit number. And if I want to get back to it, I'll simply type in git reset hyphen hyphen r, and then I'll be able to get back to that version. So this is how actually git log helps it. So with this, I hope that I have explained that as well. Thanks a lot. Are there any more queries? What is benefit of staging area and get? Yeah, so I'll answer that as well. Staging area. So basically, what happens is, suppose you have made certain mistakes. So say I'm a backend developer, and while I had made certain changes, which I felt later on have been made by me by mistake, and some other developer has already done it. So what I'll do is that I will simply stage that command, and to stage that set of work that I've done, the command is git stash. So stash allows you to stage the entire set of code that you have written previously, and then pull the code from the remote repository. So I hope that with this I have resolved all the queries. uh, if you have still got any query, I'll just drop my LinkedIn once again so that you can have your queries resolved later on. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everyone. This was Kaushik Roy from Incubate IND, and I hope that you had a very informative session. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Kaushik. That was really informative. And thank you, everyone, for sticking with us for about an hour and a half. I hope you have learned a lot from today's session and hope to connect back to you soon. Thank you so much.